All right, guys, we are live on our Facebook page. Hello, Max. Hello, Jackie. We are very happy to see you, and thank you very much for accepting the invitation and being our guest speakers. It's wonderful to have you today. And as usual, we have to wait a few minutes. Just our viewers can receive notifications and will join us. How are you doing, Max, Jackie? It's early morning on your side.
It
Let's
is.
take a photo for my Instagram. This is so exciting.
Yeah, take a photo. Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
Oh, well, I'm doing well. It's about 7 a.m. here and the sun's just about rising. So I'm excited to, I've never been to Kyrgyzstan before, so this is the closest I'll get for a while.
Yes,
How are you, Max?
Max.
I'm okay. It's been a busy week. Not too bad. I'll wait for the folks to. We should wait for the folks to come on before introducing ourselves, right?
Oh, I will make an introduction.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Oh, our viewers join us already. Good evening, dear friends, Bishkek American Center followers. Thank you for joining our evening session. And we are very excited to continue our virtual US State Tours program. And guess what? Today we are going to visit Alaska State. And it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speakers today, Max Gelber and Jackie Curnick. So Max is a program director of the DC-based Uyghur American Associations. In his early 20s, Max lived, worked, and studied throughout China and Kyrgyzstan. After graduating from college, he served as Fulbright English teaching assistant at Arbayev University in Bishkek. And Jackie, she is the community engagement coordinator for the Environmental Health Sciences Research Center at University of Iowa. In 2015, she was awarded a Fulbright grant to work in South Africa. In 2017, she completed her master's practicum with Alaska Conservation Foundation and Alaska Community Action on Toxics, focusing on a variety of conservation issues. Her work culminated in a documentary film about environmental justice for the Yupik people of State Lawrence Island, Alaska. We screened it at the Arctic Explorers Film Festival in New York. So, dear friends, so we have today exciting program. So don't forget to ask your question during the live, and after the presentation, our guest speakers will answer them. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Aida.
Okay, I'm adding.
Yeah, we can see it, Jackie.
And I actually have two screens, so I can see things now. Well, I'll get started. My name is Jackie, and I guess we should say that these are our own views, not the views of the embassy. These are just kind of my experiences in Alaska as someone that had visited there. Oh, Max, you want to say anything before I move?
Oh yeah. Sure. I don't work for the embassy either, and all my views are my own. I haven't visited Alaska, so I thought it'd be great for Jackie, my dear friend and former classmate who spent a lot of time in Alaska, working and researching in Alaska. So we hope this is good. By the way, these photos on the first page here were all taken by my good friend Jackie. Jackie, why don't you talk a little bit about
Yeah. So these photos, so the big one up in the right is probably, I would say maybe just 30 minutes outside of Anchorage. As I'll get to in the next slide, Anchorage is the biggest city in Alaska, but it is so beautiful. Really, once you leave the town, it is just this unbelievable wilderness. It's just, pictures don't do it justice. It's jaw-dropping gorgeous. And then the top left photo or top right photo with the water, that's in Seward, Alaska, which is a port, and it's a very popular tourist destination. A lot of cruises come through the area. And then the bottom corner, I think, also is just on that drive. It's very beautiful. So, as I was saying, Alaska is it's a pretty big state. Max will get into the size of it, but Anchorage is the capital. Well, it's not the capital. The capital is Juneau. That's the legislative capital. But Anchorage is really where most of the population is. You can see that there are 700,000 people that live in Alaska, and almost 300,000 of them live in Anchorage. And then after that, the second biggest city is Juneau with only 30,000 people. So that's quite a stark difference. And so I spent most of my time in Anchorage, but then also if you see, and I don't know if you can see my cursor, but oh yes, you can. This is St. Lawrence Island, and that is kind of, well, it's an island in the Bering Sea. And as you can see, it's very close to Siberia. And so you can see Siberia on a clear day there. And that's where I did my field work and made a documentary. And then Fairbanks is the third largest city, and that is here in the middle. And they call that the interior of Alaska. The interior, as they say, is much more harsh. And so because Anchorage is on the water, it's regulated by the ocean. And so their temperature, while it's cold, is more mild. So it doesn't get as hot or as cold. But Fairbanks, during the summer, it can get to 100 degrees. And then during the winter, negative 40 and, Fahrenheit. But it's very extreme temperatures. And that's where they actually do a lot of gold mining in the Fairbanks region.
Can you just point out with your cursor, Jackie, where the state capital is, Juneau?
Juneau, yes. It's here. And
it's so cute. Look at
yeah.
it.
And then Seward, where I had showed you that picture with the beautiful water, is right here. And then my husband, he spent some time in, I want to say this area down here, and that's where they do a lot of salmon processing. They call it king salmon. And so he was working to do the salmon harvest one year that we were there. Actually, he went 2 years.
All right, let's jump right in, folks. Fun facts about Alaska. As one of the 50 states, Alaska has to clamor for its glory, like every other state. So let's jump right into it. 17 of the 20 highest peaks in the U.S. are in Alaska. Peaks meaning of a mountain, like the apex of the mountain, the summit. The highest is Denali. It's called in the indigenous language, the Great One. It's 20,320 feet above sea level, which is approximately 6,200 meters above sea level. And then there's water everywhere. As you could see, Jackie, go back to the map for 1 second, the big map. As you can see, it's almost completely surrounded by water. There is more coastline in Alaska than any other state in the Union, in the United States. Go to my slide, Jackie.
And me and Max are from Florida, so that's a little bit sad for us. That's taking our title away.
Yeah. 3,000 rivers, 3 million lakes, and Lake Liamna is 1,000 square miles. It's the largest. Ice, baby. Look at Vanilla Ice right there, the picture there, the rap star. There are 1,000 glaciers in Alaska. It comprises 5% of the entire state, and it's about 34,000 miles. What is down there? I can't see it because virtual U.S. state
coastline. It says 34,000 miles of coastline.
Right, and that's actually more coastline than any other state combined. Next slide, please.
Well, I have two other things I'd like to say about this slide. So Denali is as he said, the biggest peak, and it's a national park, Denali National Park, and I was able to visit it. But it's actually because of, the weather system. It has its own weather because it's so big, and it's usually very cloudy. And so at the national park, they sell like little magnets that are like, I'm one of the 10% that got to see the top, because almost all the time it is obstructed and you actually can't see the peak. And so when I was there, I was not able to see the peak either, which was a little disappointing, but it is still very beautiful. And then also, just wanted to point out that there are 1,000 glaciers, but they are rapidly receding due to climate change. And so a lot of times they'll show markers where it was in the 80s, where it was in the 90s, and every year they, get smaller and smaller. So just something to keep in mind.
Everything's bigger in Alaska. We have this saying, everything's bigger in Texas. Well, Alaska's twice the size of Texas. In fact, the state of Alaska comprises a fifth of the entire United States in area. All roads don't lead to Juneau, the only state capital in the US that's only accessible by boat, plane, helicopter, and other means that don't need a road. It's the largest capital city in the United States by area, actually, at about 8,000 square kilometers. Off to the races. The state sport is dog mushing. The pictures you see down here is the sport of dog mushing, where dogs are connected by rope or some kind of twine and connected to a little cart in the back, and you'll see a gentleman standing in the back there. It used to be a main form of transportation, but obviously with the advent of car, helicopter, plane, and boat, well, not anymore. Yeah. Did you ever see one of these dog mushing races, Jackie?
No, I was there in the summer, so I didn't see it, but I think they call it the Iditarod. That's one of the most famous races that they do, and it's I think across the state. And so I heard of people training for the Iditarod. And also, as Max pointed out, the capital is not accessible by road, and much of Alaska is not accessible by road. They just people will talk about Anchorage and they're like, oh, it's great because it's on the road system, as if the rest of the state really is not. And so they have to take planes or, boat. And, sometimes they go by, as you said, by dog sled. And it's also, kind of dangerous. There are a lot of plane accidents because people are taking small planes. I think an Alaska senator that was very famous died in a plane crash, just traveling throughout the state. So this is salmon. These are some wonderful grizzly bears eating the salmon, and salmon really is one of the most important parts of Alaska, I would say, because it's very, it just brings together the whole community. So in 2019, the salmon industry brought in about $657 million to fishermen. So it's a very big economic driver to the state. But then also, it's a big cultural value. And so every Alaskan is entitled to a certain amount of salmon that they can take every year. And Native Alaskans are entitled to more. So they, a lot of Alaskans are subsistence, I don't want to say farmers because they're not farming, but they're subsistence gatherers and fishermen. And so they collect salmon for themselves and a lot of times smoke it throughout the winter. But it's, whether you're in the city or you're in the rural area, salmon is a really big part of your life. So this is this picture with the woman carrying a net that's called a dip net. And so you can see that many people are out on the shores. I'd like to think that's Denali, but I actually don't know what peak that is in the background. But they're going to harvest the salmon. And of course, salmon is in a season, so you can only go for I think a couple months. I don't know if you know much about salmon, but it's really amazing because salmon, they smell their way back to the area where they were born. And so they're born in Alaska, usually in the rivers, and they go throughout the Atlantic Ocean, travel, thousands of miles. And then every year they return, they make the salmon run, and they come back to that area where they were born. And that's how you know that the salmon will return every year. And it's important for
the ocean.
Yeah, they're from the ocean.
But don't they travel upstream? So they have to jump against the current to go back to their home?
Yeah, they do have to travel upstream. And so they're, in the ocean, and then they make their way back through those rivers and go upstream. And it's very important for the water to be very clean, because they are literally smelling their way back. If the water changes in metals or different elements, then they get confused. And this is why it's important to protect the land from mining and other issues. That's been a big problem in Alaska, is that they want to drill and they want to open more mines, and that can put this entire industry at risk that is so important to them. And then here in the bottom right corner, you see they call this the slime line, which is, they bring in the salmon and then they cut it up, they freeze dry it, and then they sell it all over the world. So my husband did this job for a couple of years, and it's hard work. You work 16 hours a day, and for about 6 weeks, and you just work really hard, and then you're done. And so a lot of people do this for the season. And then to preserve the salmon, they dry it, they'll smoke it, they'll make salmon jerky, which is an interesting food. But this is a Native Alaskan woman who is using the traditional way of preserving the salmon.
This picture reminds me, for the viewers from Kyrgyzstan, when you're driving to Iskul and you find on the side of the roads people drying fish in the wind, right? And you can stop on one of these roadside stands and purchase them. I don't know.
That's cool.
Have I had salmon jerky before, Jackie? Did you bring some back?
Probably not. It was a weird taste. No, it's honestly very good, but it's just it's like beef jerky but fish, so it's strange.
Yeah, not my thing.
How are we doing? Are we short on time, or I just saw we were? Oh, okay, popped. All right.
So, like Jackie said, there's a lot of subsistence hunting in Alaska. And I wanted to pull this quote from Ernest Hemingway in his book, To Have and Have Not, about a U.S. Depression era guy struggling to make ends meet, right? It's the quote is, "I don't know who made the laws, but I know there ain't no law that you got to go hungry." And so I'm pretty sure there's a lot of contestation. There's a lot of disputes over rights of folks to hunt. How much should they be able to take? Who has more rights than others? Do Native Alaskans, should they be given special priority to hunt, especially endangered species, or those that have been designated, as something that we should not be hunting, like whale? But here in these pictures, we see Native Alaskans eating, is that called, I think, mutuk? Yeah, I think it's called mutuk. It's blubber and skin of the whale on the top right, right there on the plank of wood. And on the bottom right, that's actually a moose meat. So I don't know if you've ever eaten moose. I never have. I don't know if the plural of moose is mooses or meese, but I do know.
It might be mooses.
It might be mooses, not meese.
I've never heard meese.
Anyway, so there's a lot of hunting that goes on in Alaska, and we call meats like this, we call this game meat, because it's not the conventional meat you would find in a grocery store, such as beef, chicken, or lamb, or turkey, or other products like that. It's more wild. And so a lot of Americans, I would say, are very afraid to eat this kind of meat because it's so unfamiliar to them. Although I think it's making a comeback. I think it's becoming very hipster to eat like buffalo and moose and other things.
Well, I do want to tell you, I actually have tried the whale. So it's been a while, so you might be right with the name. But it's up here. And so what this is it's the blubber of the whale and the skin. And I tried this when I was on.
By the way, for the audience, is blubber fat?
Yes, it's the fat.
Yeah.
And it's a very important part of the food, because during the winter you need that fat to sustain yourself. But on St. Lawrence Island, I was able to try the food, and I think I also might have tried it on some other gatherings throughout the summer. It tastes like seafood. I was really surprised. Like, it really does taste like the sea. It's very salty. And they also have seal and walrus are foods that they eat to sustain themselves. One story that we were talking, that I was thinking about with this is, while I was there, a 16-year-old Yupik boy, he made his first whale kill. And so every year, the community does go out together and hunt whale for food, to sustain themselves. And he had made his first kill ever, which means that, he's become a man in the culture. And it was very exciting. But, because it got on Facebook, people all over the world were very upset that he had killed the whale. And they started posting hate things and were really mean to him. And they really took that moment away from him. And so it's important to understand that this is a way of life that they have had for thousands of years. And this is very important to their culture to continue.
And not to mention that the major corporations of the world are destroying the habitats they rely on to sustain themselves and their local economies.
Yes.
One more thing on game meat, and that's a black bear. And guess what's in its mouth, Jackie? What's in its mouth?
Salmon.
Salmon. Oh, that's a really cute black bear. I would never think of eating one or killing one, but yes, in Alaska and in other parts of the United States, it is legal. It's allowed during certain times with a permit to kill and eat black bear. And as you can see, it's actually a pretty healthy meat. It's got high protein and low fat. And low calories. So for those who are looking to shed the pounds like I am, I think we're going to have to cook up some black bear. What do you think, Jackie?
Oh, gosh. Black bears are very dangerous. So I guess it's better that they're off the streets. Oh, wow. You've really added a lot about black bears.
Well, I couldn't help but say, how do you eat black bear without killing it, right? For those of you who are familiar with the United States Constitution, read the Constitution, the Second Amendment is the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. The right to bear arms, the right to own a gun, a very contentious issue in the United States in politics. I like the meme here, raise your right hand if you support the right to bear arms. It's a cute little black bear holding its hand up. But almost 65% of adults share their homes with at least one firearm. It's the highest behind Wyoming and Montana. For every 1,000 residents in Alaska, there are about 15, a little over 15 guns. So that means that, obviously that guns are very important to Alaskans for sport, for hunting, for food and such.
Yeah. And I do think that, like Wyoming, Montana, Alaska, like these are places where people are actually hunting. This is where they actually might really need a gun to do that. And also to protect themselves against the wild animals, like bears will just come into your area. And so you might need to protect yourself against one.
The last frontier, the last frontier, and there's some other kind of saying about wild Alaska or something. We have a lot of TV shows in the United States. Depict Alaska as this far out, almost alien landscape because so few people live there in certain parts.
And so the lady that I stayed with when I lived there, she would tell me that, if people move to Alaska, they're either running from something. So they said that they would get like a lot of criminals that would come to Alaska that no one would find them there, or they're just running from, their life back in the, they call it the lower 48. That means the 48 continental states that are continuous. And so she's like, you just find some weird people up here. But this is the gold rush. It's another important part of Alaska. Sometimes you'll go to, a lot of places have really wonderful architecture. Alaska doesn't really have wonderful architecture, in my opinion. And they say that because everything was built really quickly. It went from a place that was like barren to all of a sudden many people came there for the gold rush. And so they would put up these buildings super quick and they all kind of look the same. But the official Klondike Yukon Gold Rush was from 1896 to 1899, which is a very short amount of time. But many people came to that area, and this picture on the right is from Nome, and that's during the original gold rush during the late 1800s. And then they are still gold mining to this day. This picture is from a TV show that my husband loves. It's a pretty good show. It's called Gold Rush. And, they're mining usually, as I said, in the interior, so kind of near Fairbanks. And they, here they're panning for gold. They're doing it the kind of old fashioned way. And now they have these giant machines that, they're really big and it's a whole operation.
There's a lot of gold in Kyrgyzstan. It's a very contentious issue over ownership and corporate involvement in exporting gold and who owns the gold. Very contentious issue in Kyrgyz politics. Major revenue earner.
Wow. I think it might be the same here. Alaska has a lot of wonderful resources. And so this was actually like my first day in Alaska, I think. I am looking kind of annoyed, but I was trying to look upset. So we were demanding climate justice, and it says keep it in the ground because, and then here you might see protect the refuge, defend the sacred. And so that's one of the calls that a lot of Native Alaskans and people that are standing with Native Alaskans are saying is we need to defend the sacred land because it really is very important to them. But the Arctic Wildlife Refuge is an area of 19 million acres that was set aside. It's one of the last world wildernesses. It's really very important for caribou and reindeer and, even for climate change because, this area is still untouched. But currently, the current government of the U.S. Is trying to sell the rights of it for oil mining or oil drilling, and I think mining as well. And so they want
Jackie.
So yeah, it's been a very contentious issue and something that people are really fighting to save. And as I had said, Alaska's not like a typical political state. I know we're not going to get into politics, but just as you said, there are many gun owners, and there are many people that really want to protect the land because it's important to their salmon or to their tourism or just to their way of life. And so they're very close with the land.
But I also think that, I think a lot of attention, especially since the recent wildfires that have ravaged the West Coast, they're not in Alaska, but, this is renewing the conversation about climate change because of the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of the discussion has shifted necessarily to combating COVID, which, as you probably know, the United States does not have the best track record in controlling or mitigating, right? But since the wildfires, I think ahead of the November elections, there's kind of renewed attention to climate change. So I wonder how that manifests in, local politics and Alaskans talking about these issues, because I would hate for COVID to kind of, mask the importance of climate change ahead of the elections, especially for people in Alaska who rely on this for their economy, for food, for everything, right?
Yeah. And actually last year there were quite several wildfires in Alaska as well, which was really devastating. And, they're like, it's north of the Arctic Circle and we still have, wildfires. So this is some pictures from my film. I made a 20-minute documentary for my master's degree, and it says "Pulling Teeth from a Polar Bear," and that title is actually from.
Such a good.
Thank you. It's from the community chief that was speaking, and he was. So a little bit of background on this community. As I said, this island is very close to Russia. And so there was a military base on the island for, I want to say it was during the Cold War. So it was like was basically from the 50s until I think the 70s. And because of that, there's been some pollution and some environmental issues, environmental health issues. And they've been trying to get some people to clean it up, the military to clean it up. And the chief said, when you're fighting with the federal government, it's like pulling teeth from a polar bear. It is the toughest job there is. Like how it's like wrestling a polar bear and how hard it was. But so this is me and my friend Maddie, and then this is Vi Wahi. She is a native person from Savunga, but she works in in Anchorage and has been advocating for the rights of her community for many years. And so this is us filming.
Savunga?
Pardon?
For the audience, what is Savunga?
Savunga, that is one of the towns on the island of St. Lawrence Island. So there are two communities there. It's called Gelber and Savunga. And there used to be more communities, but their island has really shrunk in like population for many reasons. But those are the two last remaining kind of communities on the island.
This is extremely remote, as you can see. Well, the small plane that Jackie had to fly in with actual blades instead of a jet engine. I mean, in the United States, we don't really fly those commercially anymore. Except in Alaska.
Yeah, and so this is important to note. Thanks for reminding me. This is literally the only way, really, that they can get anywhere. And so, anytime there's no doctors on this island. If somebody needs medical attention and they have very high cancer rates, they have to call a doctor on the mainland, and then they have to assess if it's important enough for them to take one of these planes, which it's not cheap, to actually take them back to the mainland to be treated at the hospital there. All their food, everything comes on these tiny little planes, and so that's why subsistence, living is so important, because if you wanted macaroni and cheese or something, American, it's like they said 3 to 4 times the normal price that you might get on the mainland. And they don't really have any money because there's not, they're subsistence people. And so it's very hard to make ends meet currently in this time.
We have a couple questions in the chat here.
Yes.
You already began to talk about your documentary, but we have one from Ida.
You mean I die? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I die.
Yes. Hello. Thanks for your presentation. My question: is Alaska really far away?
So I was gonna say, Jackie, can you show
Yeah.
Can you show like a world map? And it's really close. Actually, to be honest, you guys are probably closer to where Jackie was doing her field research than from where we're from, which is Florida. They're totally opposite sides of the.
I'm going to try to get a map up here. Oh, yeah. So,
oh, wait. You must come visit Alaska.
Thank you. Thank you, Max, Jackie, for your incredible presentation. It was wonderful.
Oh, you're
very
welcome.
Informative and very interesting.
Great. Thank you.
So while Jackie pulls up a map so you could see how far, or do you want me to pull up the map?
No, I have it. I wasn't sure if our presentation, if it's done, if we're out of time since.
Oh, no. We have question and answer right now. I'm looking up.
Okay, so can you guys see that?
Yes.
I'll just exit this part. But yeah, so here is where we're from in Florida. And then Alaska is all the way up here. So it is very far away. And, Canada is actually, so this is Canada over here. So it kind of is separated. You can't really just drive straight through. And that's why they call this part the lower 48, because there's 48 states below Alaska. And then we have Hawaii.
Hawaii, right.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how large it is. That's such a mammoth state. And I imagine since Russia's right there, Jackie, if you could move the map a little bit, that area right there, there must be a lot of military and buildup there, no? I mean, are there like watchtowers and like surveillance and stuff on each side of the points from the U.S. military and Russian military?
Well, that was kind of the whole problem, is that they had put all that stuff on the island, and then and so they still have a lot of military in Alaska. There's a military base there. I don't think that the island is still military right now. But what happened was they didn't want to take it out because it's so far away. They would have to barge it all. So they literally buried everything. They just put it underground, and that's kind of, and then there was also oil and stuff that they apparently spilled into the ocean. So that's not good.
Some people want to watch your documentary. Have it on YouTube or social media, Jackie, or if we could get
Jackie, a question for you. Can we watch
Sure.
the documentary, a small part of it? Or would it be possible to watch it online if it's available in YouTube or other social media?
So thank you guys for your interest in it. I do have it online. It is actually not published on social media just because I wanted to protect the community, because it's kind of, a sensitive topic for them, and I didn't want, anybody to be able to find it. But I could send you the link. Would you be able to pass it on? Or, because I have a Google Drive link that I could send it to you afterwards.
It would be great.
The lowest.
Okay,
sorry. Somebody asked the lowest recorded temperature. It's negative 62 Celsius in 1971. Negative 62 Celsius. And the name Alaska is actually in a variety of different indigenous languages or various forms of something that sounds close to how we pronounce Alaska, or in the Russian, Alyaska.
Alaska. Yes.
Did you meet Russian speakers? Well, Jackie, I don't know if I had asked you before, but are there family members on each side of the peninsula, like on the Alaska and Russian side, and are they allowed to visit each other, or like members of the same tribe?
I think that was actually an issue. They used to be able to go more freely, and then there were people, because they all are Siberian Yupik, and so people in this area are the same tribe as people in Russia. But I think during the Cold War, that communication was cut off, and I don't think really they've lost touch.
Were there any people speak Russian on the St. Lawrence Island?
Not that I know of. They speak Siberian Yupik, their native language.
Do they teach in Yupik too in the schools?
They do teach Yupik in the schools. It's actually, it's an issue for many cultures around the world, where the new generation, they are actually much more like maybe traditional Americans, watch a lot of YouTube or something, and so they're worried that their language is kind of getting lost as well. Max, you have a question. Are there any food you like most?
What do you like the most in Alaska?
I don't know specific. I'm trying to, in the United States, there's a lot of regional flavor. At the same time, you can find food from around the world anywhere you go, whether it be Anchorage or Juneau or Miami, Florida. That's kind of a special thing in the United States. I don't know if like regional, like what Alaska cuisine is, other than knowing that there's a lot of game meat. I do know, however, and fish, of course, especially salmon. I would imagine that specialty products are very expensive to ship there. So like here, I'm in Virginia, Northern Virginia, which is basically I'm in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. And I can go to a specialty Chinese or Asian market and find produce, that you would see in southern China. I doubt that is available in places like Alaska, especially because the growing season is so short because it's so cold. So much has to be shipped in. And that's why in places like St. Lawrence Island, where Jackie shot her documentary, things are so expensive there, because if you want to get a box of macaroni and cheese or like coffee or something like that, it has to be shipped so far. So fresh stuff, like it's probably very difficult to find fresh on the island, right?
Is it expensive to live in Alaska?
Is it expensive?
Yes, is it expensive to live in Alaska?
It actually is expensive, yes. They do pay more than the average place in the lower 48, and they say that that is because everything is just expensive to ship, and even in Anchorage, things are expensive. I found the link to the film. Is there a way I can put it in the private chat and then you can send it?
Yes, sure.
Because I don't know if I can send it to the comments, but so this, I was a student. It's not the most professional documentary in the world, but I hope you like it.
Thank you very much, Jackie, for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. How do people survive without any medical services? Yeah, it's hard. So one positive thing, as I had said, is that there is a native hospital, which means that the state did set up a special hospital just for Indigenous Alaskans, and they get to be treated for free. But it is, I think, in Anchorage or on the mainland. So basically the government does have to pay to transport people from their homes to be treated at that hospital. The other option is that they have community health workers, and the organization that I had worked with, that's part of their work, is that they are training people to be community nurses, and so that they can provide, some basic health services. But, and then also when I was there, an eye doctor, her whole job is just making the rounds from community to community. So every year she might, visit the same community and see if anybody needs glasses.
It's I don't know if the viewers have heard about the U.S. healthcare system, but it's a total and utter mess. We rely on employer coverage for insurance, and insurance companies are incredibly difficult. Anyway, care here, the quality of care is very good. The doctors, but the labyrinthine, very complex system of health insurance makes it very difficult for people to access healthcare. And this is amplified much larger in an atmosphere or an environment like in Alaska. But the good thing about it in the United States is if you go to an emergency room, nobody will turn you away. I was seeing, quite frightening videos in Kyrgyzstan of hospitals turning away COVID-19 patients, and it was heartbreaking because I spent time in Kyrgyzstan, and my wife is from Kyrgyzstan. Her name is Birmet. So the good thing here is, like, if you go to an ER, an emergency room, you will be turned away. So,
do you ever worry about COVID situation in Alaska State?
Actually, they have a really good track record on COVID. I was looking it up yesterday.
Where are you?
Well, they have one of the highest testing rates. So they're testing a lot of folks. Of course, it happens in waves here in the United States. It was first New York, and then, New York is now dealing with it better. Now North Dakota is having a huge outbreak. So, this is nice to see you too, Aigerim. It's so nice to reconnect with you. I used to do these, about 9 years ago when I was a Fulbright English teaching assistant. I've been to the Nada in American Corner. I've been all over the country, and it's just so, I don't know.
So,
brings back a lot of memories.
And just to answer also, I just looked it up real quick. So there are about 7,000 cases, total recorded cases of COVID-19 in Alaska. There's only been 41 deaths, which is pretty good compared to other parts. In my state of Iowa, there's been 77,000 cases and 1,200 deaths. So, part of that really is the isolation, I think, as well.
We're also doing a lot of, you hear these numbers are very high. There's a lot of testing going on in the United States. It could be better, but, thankfully you can go get a test here and it doesn't cost you any money. The state will pay for it if you don't have health insurance. So that's a good thing. Alaska, I think.
I'd like to come visit. Since Max married someone from Kyrgyzstan, I'm hoping to come for their wedding.
Please come to visit us.
We
Jackie.
will have a wedding in Issaquah, and you're all invited.
Oh,
When
great.
when the COVID situation gets better, hopefully.
Mhm.
We'll live stream for an American Corner.
Wait, it's September 18th. Fall is upon us. Do I remember?
Mm,
This is it's starting to get a little cold, right?
right now, even. Yes.
Yeah,
It's kind of warm weather.
but it will start getting cold. You think winters are rough in Iowa, Jackie? They are very rough in Kyrgyzstan.
Oh no.
They are very rough because the sidewalks are all ice, and so you have to be walking like this. And I always fall, and you know, Kyrgyz people are like running on the street. I'm like, how do you do this? They're like, well, we grew up here, so it's easy for us. Does anyone have any other questions about?
Yes, we have. We receive questions from the social media. Questions for both of you. What was the unusual thing in local culture?
In what culture?
Local culture in Alaska.
An unusual thing.
Unusual.
Whale, eating whale.
Yeah. Well, I would say that like Alaskans they do say like a little bit weird anyway, because a lot of times they are very isolated. And so people will say people in Anchorage are like the cool people, and then people in the rural areas, like they don't see too many others. So it's a different culture. But overall, yeah, I would definitely say eating like the moose. One other thing though that like isn't really weird, but they spend a lot of time outside in the summer. Like in Florida, it's very hot. So like in the summer, I don't really do like a ton of things. But for them, they'll go to work and then they'll finish work and then they'll go on a hike. They'll go mountain biking every single day, just because it's so cold and dark for a lot of the year that when it's finally sunny, they will be, they want to really enjoy it. And also it doesn't get dark until like really ever. So, in parts of the summer, it never goes down. And so they call it like land of the midnight sun, because it is always light during the summer.
Thank you, Jackie, for your answer. We received one more question.
Yeah, have you ever heard of Admiralty Island? Somebody's saying what's so special.
Yeah.
Admiralty Island.
I honestly do not know. But
Interesting.
Yeah, I've never really heard of it, but it is the 7th largest island in the United States.
There's a fun fact. Alaska's a little strange, right? It's like it's more right leaning than left, right? Like Republican, but yet marijuana is legal there. Is that correct? No,
marijuana has been legal in Alaska since like the 80s. It's been legal there for a really long time.
But it's Republican, right? It's like generally like
they say Alaska is like a very purple state, meaning that it's it's hard to know because there are so many it's different. For instance, just because you have a gun does not necessarily mean you're a Republican. But yeah, so they have recreational and I did try it.
Okay. So have I.
Yeah, it was nice. You just go into a store. It's like, buying beer, I guess.
Yeah, so it's like liberal in some ways and conservative in others. It's Alaska. What an anomaly. I love it. I want to go to Alaska. The cruise industry, that's going to hurt Alaska a lot because the cruise industry is so hurt by coronavirus. There are a lot of cruise ships that would go into Alaska, right? And during the summer, these small towns of 2,000 people would suddenly swell to 20,000 people, 40,000 people. I wonder what that does to everything, like in summer when there are so many tourists about.
Yeah, They did say, I actually saw an article yesterday that Alaska is going to be a very popular tourist destination going forward because it is isolated. So, it's easier it's better than going to a big city for your vacation. But I don't know if you can hear my dogs. They're ready to go on a walk.
Oh, the last question. Can I ask you the last question? How do the native communities keep their languages alive?
So, yeah, that has been a struggle, as I had said, where people, you know, had lost some of their languages. I think some languages have been lost, unfortunately, but they have been teaching them in schools, and there have been efforts by the public health people to bring them back. And so they'll also have like cultural centers where they go and have food. So, like when I ate the whale, that was in Anchorage at a cultural event where there was dancing and, special music. And so they do make an effort. And I think that, they're in the last couple of years, young people are starting to see how important it is to keep your native language. And so they have been, practicing that as well.
Well, and also, there are places, there are research centers like the Alaska Native Language Center, the University of Alaska Fairbanks. A lot of the universities in Alaska have dedicated programs in indigenous languages such as Yupik and others, and that's just one of them. So I think that's also how they keep the languages alive through language documentation and research as well.
Mm-hmm.
These are great questions. Thank you, guys.
You guys are the best. I miss Kyrgyzstan so much. I'm ready to, Pilov, Manti.
Yes. Thank you, Max, Jackie, for the amazing session. It was wonderful to have you. Please come to visit Kyrgyzstan to Max again. Jackie, like the first time visiting Kyrgyzstan, so I hope that pandemic will end and everything will be fine. Thank you very much, dear guest speakers. And also, thank you, dear viewers, for your comments and questions. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.